Hello, and welcome to Zine Club Chicago Online, The Business of DIY, a conversation with Jenna Blazevich of Vichcraft. We're really excited to have you with us tonight. I'm Cynthia E. Hanifin, the producer of Zine Club Chicago, and I'm coming to you from our sponsor, Quimby's Bookstore here in Wicker Park, Chicago, and we're here with Jenna Blazevich of Vichcraft. Jenna is a local artist and chain stitcher, and she's channeled her DIY passions into one of Chicago's most inventive small businesses. Vichcraft is Jenna's independent and collaborative multidisciplinary studio. Since being founded in 2015, Vichcraft has steadily been building a collection of social issue-driven projects made with various tactile handcraft mediums. Currently, there is a focus on creating embroidery work using a 100-year-old hand crank machine, lettering design collaborations with socially conscious companies, and conceptual stained glass. Vichcraft strives to work right around the line between art, craft, and design to create historically informed work that provokes new ways of thinking. You've likely seen Vichcraft's stunning work around town at local pop-ups and craft fairs, at Vichcraft Shop in Irving Park, and of course here at Quimby's on this year's 32nd year anniversary merch. Here is one example of the beautiful risograph print that Jenna did for us. And also we'll show you the book plate sticker, and of course the limited edition t-shirt with the beautiful design as well. At the heart of Vichcraft is a commitment to DIY values, including a focus on socially conscious projects, collaboration with other like-minded independent businesses, the ethical sourcing of materials, and meaningful support for others in the community. We're thrilled to have Jenna with us today to talk about the nuts and bolts of making a living with your art while expressing your DIY values, building an indie business from the ground up, forging successful partnerships with other creative folks, and more. Welcome, Jenna. It's so wonderful to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much for all of that. That's so kind, and I'm very happy to be here.
We're so glad to have you here. Hello to all of our Zine Club Chicago folks over on YouTube. Really excited that you're here for this discussion. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in, Jenna, and ask you, where did the idea for Vichcraft come from?
I had been freelancing on the side of a design job or I guess multiple design jobs for probably 2 or 3 years before I started Vichcraft. And back then I was just working under my name, doing mostly wedding envelope calligraphy and some odd graphic design jobs. And I think I wouldn't have even considered starting my own business and doing this full time had I not had several years of experience just being around my husband's band and watching them just figure out everything for themselves and essentially run a small business that was based around disseminating their art and getting the exposure that they needed. And I think about that a lot sometimes, about how I don't necessarily have any entrepreneurial examples that I can speak to in my family that would have kind of made me think, oh, one day I want to run my own business. But between freelancing and just, learning how to manage my own time and seek out clients and just do a good job seeing projects through, and that in combination with being alongside people like my husband and his band and his friends that were also doing things on their own and just figuring things out on the go. I think it sort of just fell into place that ended up just being what made sense to me, is to combine my experience and my interests and try to make a job for myself versus seek a job that already existed that could check all of the boxes that I was looking for a job to check, which I just kind of became more and more aware of how complicated and difficult that would be without me making it myself. So that's sort of the thought process behind starting a business in general. And then the name, if that's kind of the question too, is half of my last name, but you guys know that because it's on the flyer. But yeah, Vichcraft. I vividly remember thinking of the name and being pretty excited about that. And but yeah, that was all back in the end of 2014 and then launched at the beginning of 2015.
I love that you mention the idea of seeing the example of your husband and his bandmates running a band as an entrepreneurial business, because I feel that that's a model that's very much an example for a lot of folks in the DIY sphere.
Oh yeah.
And of course, your work has quite a bit of a rock and roll sensibility to it as well. So I can definitely see those influences there.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you create in several different mediums, including embroidery, hand lettering, and stained glass. Is there a common thread that connects all of your work in those mediums?
Pun, maybe kind of thread, but I guess I usually say that the umbrella that everything falls under is custom lettering, because back as far as, when I'm talking about wedding calligraphy and things like before Vichcraft, the thing that I was trying to focus most of my energy on was to be able to create custom lettering from scratch. And then throughout my entire career with running my business, that's been the thing that has been just like a throw line through all of those different mediums, almost entirely. And there's been a handful of things, I guess, that are purely illustrative and don't have lettering, but that's a very small subset of things amongst way more that all has something that's been custom lettered. And sometimes that's me working with a business to create a logo type and figure out how best to translate what they represent and stand for as a business and create something custom that's going to work well in that way. But then there's also pieces that I've made, like the stained glass, that are trying to provoke thought and get an idea across, and using lettering styles and a medium that are chosen in order to have those ideas be conveyed in the way that I want them to be. And of course, once I started using my chain stitch machine, which was a little over 5 years ago, I believe, I was hoping that once I could learn the mechanics of it and actually become familiar with how to actually run the machine, that my experience with lettering would translate to working with the kind of script style that is traditionally used or made with those machines. And so that took some practice, but that is what has happened. And then I've also kind of like pushed it in ways that are a little bit more labor intensive, but also lettering related for the most part.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that is definitely, when I think of Vichcraft, the first thing I think of is your beautiful lettering, and also the ways in which you're able to adapt your lettering style to fit the unique personality of the other organizations that you partner with. I did want to ask, you do often use your work to call attention to social issues, and sometimes also to raise money for causes you believe in. Why is focusing on social issue-driven projects important to you?
I mean, as a person, those things are extremely important to me. And I am always concerned with being as aware and involved in making things better, and trying to encourage other people to use whatever is within their means to stay aware and educated and contribute to things becoming better for everyone. I guess that's a really vague way of talking about caring about social justice. But when I was considering starting a business versus trying to find a job somewhere that was going to check the boxes, as I was talking about before, that was something that I was learning was going to be very difficult, is to find a job that at the very least didn't oppose my morals and values. Like, for instance, there's jobs that some of my classmates kind of got filtered into in the city I went to college in, that basically like is a job making packaging for products that are ruining the planet. And if those are products that I wouldn't buy because I don't like want to support that, I also don't want to make it my job to make those more attractive for someone to purchase. That's worse, in my opinion, than actually buying them. anyways, at the very least, I didn't want to do that. And in the best case scenario, I could work with the company as an employee that has values and ethics that are aligned with my own, and they give back to organizations that are meaningful to them and myself, and they don't use exploitative methods to create whatever they're making, all of those things. And I just became more and more aware of how unlikely that was going to be. And so I decided that that would be what I would do for myself, is create a job that doesn't exist and make it possible for me to create work and make enough money to have a modest life, but also have the means to use that artwork and that money to push forward the organizations that are doing real work that is important to me, and try to do what is possible given what I can do to benefit those organizations, or whatever the case may be. So that was important from the beginning. And there also have been opportunities to make pieces like the stained glass and larger works that are just expressions of what matters, that it just really exists only to provoke thought and in those ways. And that is also important, but being able to give monetary support to organizations has also been something that's obviously important to me. And I've tried to do that in different ways with different levels of success, because it's all trial and error when you're just running your own ship. But anyways, yeah. So that's the thought, I guess, behind that, and that's ever changing.
I love that is something that it was part of Vichcraft from the very beginning, this idea of expressing your values through the work you create. And I also know that comes through the businesses and organizations you partner with. Now, how do you choose which other entities to work with?
That's a good question. I guess I've only had a handful of times where an opportunity came up, and it was for a company that is just so obviously not aligned with my values. Or there was one time where it was a political candidate that was like, absolutely not. I don't even know how you got here. But no, thank you. But I think, well, I haven't necessarily had to do any, what's it called when you have to outreach. Yeah.
Soliciting. Yeah.
Yes. Because I'm just a one person business, I think. And because I've just been steadily working for as long as I have, the opportunities that have come my way have been through word of mouth and that kind of thing. So I think because it's been sort of organic in the way that I've gotten opportunities, I think that my values being so obviously tied with my business because of the ways that I'm choosing to share that, or choosing to share those things, it kind of sifts out the people and companies that wouldn't be a good fit, because if they are in opposition to what I clearly stand for, they probably don't even want to have that conversation in the first place about working together, because it would reflect in opposition with what message they want to send if they work with me and they're anti-abortion or something, for example, and then you click on the person you collaborated with and it shows all this pro-choice, pro-abortion work. So I don't think I've had to have that many difficult conversations or moral quandaries, because those people are already like, no, that's not the girl for us. And I'm like, I'm glad you get that before we have to discuss.
So it sounds like there are a lot of advantages to being really transparent in your work and in your business about what your personal values are.
I think so. I like to think about how important it is to me to be to like foster strong connections with a small percentage of people than to foster very surface level connections with a wider range of people who are just like, oh yeah, that's nice. Versus people being like, I feel heard and seen by this, but those people are a smaller number. But I've always been more interested in having those kinds of experiences with an audience to my work than to just have something that's kind of like, oh yeah, this is fine for anyone. We can hang it in a hotel lobby. No one's gonna be mad.
Now, I know social media can be sort of a double-edged sword for independent businesses, especially when your business is values driven. How do you personally navigate and use social media to promote Vichcraft?
Well, I feel like I have had to sort of rethink it, just like everyone else, within the last 3 to 5 years. Because when I first started my business, I made it a point to post on Instagram every day. And that was when images were static and things were chronological. And so I was able to have pretty good success with people seeing my work in a kind of regular and prompt way. And I would be able to post things that were not necessarily like super styled, I guess. It could just be a image of my actual drawing of lettering. But as things kind of changed and influencers became more of a thing, and it kind of Instagram just pushed more into like kind of a lifestyle app, I think a lot of artists and people who make work like similar to what I do kind of had to think of ways to share it in a way that's kind of more like there's a person here, whether it's sharing it, the process behind it and the person making it, or kind of like putting hands in a photo with the sketch or whatever the case may be. So in my case, I think I just kind of, I post less frequently than I used to back then, because if I am going to make something that's more about process and show a little bit of behind the scenes, that's going to take a lot more time for me to be able to compile all of that behind the scenes footage and put together something that's digestible, I guess. And so maybe that's something I could do more often, but the reality is I don't know. I have the patience to do that maybe like a couple of times a month, and that's okay. But yeah, it's kind of just changed because of how people use those apps differently. And we're all kind of, I think, reluctantly opening social media anyway, when the time comes with our little phones in our hands and we're like, guess I'm scrolling here again. And I don't know, I'm mindful of that. I try not to rely on it being a way I can grab people's attention, because if someone's not on there, I'm like, good for you. I don't know why am I on here either. So yeah, it's kind of having to change and just kind of shift at all times. And I'm just riding the waves, I guess.
Like we all are.
Yeah.
Continue to evolve as well. Are there non-digital ways that you found that are valuable to you in terms of getting the word out about Vichcraft?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to, it's digital, but I'm trying to be better about sending out my email newsletter. And that's good, because I do have a lot of friends who are like, oh, I'm missing what you're working on, but I'm off social now. And I'm like, that's great. I need to actually have something that makes my work shareable for people who are having a healthy relationship with their phone. I used to send physical mail every year to usually around like 200 recipients. And I was just thinking about that this week, actually. So I started doing that in 2010. And back then I sent out a Valentine's / it was kind of to celebrate me changing my major in college from fashion design to graphic design. And so I sent it to all these people who had an impact on me with my decision to do that, just family, people who are supportive and whatnot, and made this screen printed like card that I sent out to maybe at that point, maybe like 100 people. And then just made kind of a tradition of it. And I sent out a Valentine every year following, probably until maybe like 2018 or so, and 2019, channeled that energy into sending out what was a save the date for my husband and my first attempt at what became a many year postponed pandemic wedding. But so because of the postponements and because I love mail and because there was a lot of things to do for those pieces of like wedding mail, I didn't send out Valentine's those years. I sent out, wedding stuff for 3 years. And then now it's this year. And I'm like, well, should I send out a New Year's card or something? Because back when I started doing it in 2010, and it was, like I said, it was kind of like career related, but it was not officially like something that I was intending to use in a way that was going to benefit a future business of mine. It just happens to kind of be like that in hindsight. But once I started Vichcraft, those years that I sent out the Valentine, that was an opportunity for me to try a new medium. Like I made one with this really ornate stencil one year. I made one with a letterpress plate one year. I did like this paper cut thing, which was not a good idea because they were so labor intensive, but it was just like a fun thing that I could use as a reason to try something new. And those, once I was running Vichcraft, those were getting sent out to people who I had collaborated with that I wanted to thank, people who I admired, who I hadn't met yet, but I just wanted to let them know, like, you inspire me and here's some mail. And I don't know, at the time it felt so normal to me because I love mail, and I'm just like, everyone knows that, who's in my like close in my life. And my husband and I were in a long distance relationship for about 3 years, and we sent each other mail every day. So when I was sending out those things and being like, yeah, I'm sending these out to people, this is kind of business related, but also just like something nice to do, I didn't consider how memorable that would be for people who don't usually send or receive mail. And then there's at least 10 people that I can think of who I met years later and said like, oh my gosh, you're the one who sent the mail. And I was like, yes, that is me. That's wild that you remember that. And then now they're my close friends or people who I've gotten to work with and whatnot. So I should do that. Again. I should start that up again. And that's something that I guess unintentionally has been a thing that is not digital, but helps people become aware of or become reminded of things that I do and want to do more of, I guess.
I love that. We are very pro mail here at Zine Club Chicago and have done zine and postcard and mail exchanges and things. So, and it is really memorable. I will say also, as someone who's personally purchased things online from your shop, I know that you very much include a personal touch often. I know that I got a package once with a note from you, and there was an extra item in there. And I feel that knowing the person behind the business, at least for me, really makes me feel even better about supporting a small business.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I think that it sounds like the sending mail is a beautiful part of that as well.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned that your wedding had been postponed several times because of the pandemic. Were there significant effects to your business because of the pandemic as well?
Yes. I mean, I used to do calligraphy workshops every month and some other events as well. But ever since I started Vichcraft, I always did at least one workshop a month. And that wasn't necessarily like something I was hugely dependent on financially. It was something that, definitely was a part of my income. But I think that was something that I wanted to consistently have be part of my business offering, because I wanted to have those like public facing experiences and be able to connect with people and share a craft in real life. But when the pandemic started, it was obviously not going to be right to teach the workshops. And I wasn't interested in trying to like figure out a way to have a 2020 version of them because it just wasn't, I didn't want to have to deal with all of the complicated like factors about that. I just I had a space at the time to host those workshops and to do other client meetings and things. And my lease was up in the fall of 2020, and I just didn't even give it a second thought to renew it because I had no, just like the rest of us, I had no idea what we were in for. So just made obvious sense to me to sort of close the chapter on that space. And then I just moved my work setup home, and I focused a lot more on my online shop and did some long overdue kind of like housekeeping things with my shop. And it served as a opportunity to have items added to my shop that were chain stitchable, because prior to the pandemic starting, I only would kind of do that stuff at events, and I didn't have a way to go on my website and have a beanie, buy a beanie and get it stitched with one word, for example. So once I was, obviously aware that online shopping with my business is going to be way more of what I needed to kind of streamline and rely on for my income, I put a lot of effort into figuring out how to like build those tools in my shop that were going to like have the right text boxes for people to tell me what is being stitched on the thing, and have it all match up with the right kind of thread colors and images and stuff, which was just things that I was always like, yeah, I'll get to it. But I needed a real reason, and that was the real reason. And I think, I don't know, fortunately, I was running Vichcraft just alone, as I still am now. So I didn't have to figure out what was going to make sense with someone or multiple people that I employed, and try to figure out if there are no events and there is no space and it's just me working at home. I didn't have to do what a lot of people with small businesses with multiple people had to do, which is figure out like how to make that make sense and stay afloat while navigating it. So I was grateful for that at the time. And yeah, another thing came to mind and I'm forgetting. But there weren't any there are some people like some friends who do like one or two huge events every year, and they rely on that for like 50% of their income. And they spend like a significant amount of time preparing for whatever, event that is. And obviously when all events were gone, took a big hit financially. But I think because I was already always spinning like 20 plates at once, 3 of them or so fell, and the other ones were like, oh, okay, it's just a little bit less of each of these, but I think I can still do this.
So sort of diversifying what you're doing. So if any one piece changes because of something like a pandemic, you've got other stuff going. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's how it worked out for me, at least. Yeah.
And it does seem like with things opening back up again, that you're back to doing a lot of events at businesses. We had you at Quimby's a few weeks ago, which was really exciting, with your chain stitch machine in the shop. And I know you do that at other events and other businesses as well. Was that always something that you planned to have as part of Vichcraft, or did that idea of going and doing pop-ups sort of develop along the way?
Definitely developed along the way in terms of chain stitching. Because I took a pretty big chance when getting this machine and like investing in the what if, because they're very expensive and they're hard to learn to use. And so I was hopeful that I would be, diligent enough about practicing and trying to get better, that I would be able to do it well enough to do it as part of my job. But it was a gamble. Like it could have been something where I was like, honestly, this is like really hard. I need to sell it again. But prior to getting the machine, I would do Renegade, Craft Fair, and other things like that on a, like a pop-up kind of basis. And that was good, early on with my business, doing those kinds of things, because they were opportunities for people to learn about Vichcraft and people hadn't seen it elsewhere, and just like exposure, I suppose. But they're a lot of work. They're a lot of work and they're expensive to do. Like the actual fee of even getting to be there is expensive. And I have always wanted to have at least, a chunk of my work be accessible products and things with a reasonable price point, so that if someone enjoys some of the lettering that I've made, that they can buy like a $2 sticker of it. And it's not only available on something that's more of like an investment piece, like a hand painted version of it or a stitched version of it. And I guess I just found that doing those kinds of events are trickier for people who sell lower price point items, because turns out you have to sell 400 $2 stickers before you like start making money, when the booth fee is like $800. And you're like, okay, that's a lot of interactions with people for this to start like making money. And especially given that they're long days and they're difficult. So in my case, I would hire my sister to help work with me. And so I would be paying her to spend her weekend there, of course, I'm going to pay her. So then that's like even more, we're talking even more stickers and prints. But yeah, I was grateful for those experiences at the time. But once I was in a physical space and able to kind of bring people to me if they wanted to get something made, or they wanted to buy a print or whatever the case was back in my old space, I just kind of prioritized doing less of the big art fairs for those combo reasons. But they're a good thing when I think more so when you're starting out, or if your product is like jewelry or something, where you just roll up with like a suitcase of fine jewelry and just sell a couple of those and now you're making money. I don't know. So that's those were like pop-ups that I was doing before chain stitching, and then that kind of like totally changed how I operate with events, and it's like almost exclusively to do that, to chain stitch somewhere.
I can say from personal experience, it's really exciting to see that 100-year-old chain stitch machine you have in action. I know that's probably the piece of equipment that folks most associate with Vichcraft, but I know we've talked a little bit about another piece of equipment that lots of folks in our community would love to hear about. Can you tell me a little bit about how you acquired your risograph machine and how you use it for your business?
Yeah. So when I started Vichcraft, I used to work out of a co-working studio, a co-working space. And I worked out of there for, I think, a year and a half before I got a space in like an artist building that people had their own little spaces. And so when I was in the co-working space, there was a risograph there and kind of like a print area where they had some other resources that were available for the people who paid for a desk to use. And so that was my first experience with a risograph in general. And I experimented a lot with it. I had worked with letterpress machines before that, and done a lot of screen printing. Just the majority of the screen printing that I had done was like kitchen table kind of vibes. But I also did work at a screen printing shop in 2010 as well, like in a professional way. But yeah, a risograph kind of was a good combination of things that I just didn't know was an option. So experimented a lot with it there. And I think they probably had maybe like 4 to 6 colors. And one of them was a metallic gold that I think that the person who bought everything for the space, like the person who ran that little print area, I asked him if you could use the gold on like a darker color paper, and he was like, no, sorry, it won't show up. And so then I got some black paper from French paper as an experiment, and it showed up and it was super opaque. And I was like, whoa, I'm going to make this my personality for the next like few weeks. And I'm going to like print all of my work on this. And I think prior to those experiments, I made 1 or 2 products, patches, just to sort of experiment with what even is having like at the time I had a Squarespace commerce like site that I was able to figure out how to post a product and fulfill orders and figure out stamps.com and all that stuff. So that was already set up for my silly little patches. So then when I was experimenting with the Riso, and figuring out how to make it look presentable enough to sell them, I think at first I probably experimented with selling prints at Renegade, maybe like 1 or 2 times, and then got them photographed and listed them on my site and figured out how to ship them without them getting bent and all of that. But so that is a long-winded answer to my first time like working with the Riso. And then I was moving into a space of my own. And I knew that because I was on good terms with the people at the co-working space, that I could still have access to the Riso if I wanted. But I knew that just based on how I was using it, which was more, I liked being able to be experimental with it and not have to be like, okay, well, now I'm coming with my stack of paper and I'm going to print this lettering and this lettering, and then I'll go. And I like to be able to be more like on the fly with it. And so I just looked up on eBay for like a few months if there were any similar machines that were around. And I became aware of Halligan's and tried to figure out if they had any machines that were similar, which at the time they didn't. And I saw this machine come up on eBay that was the kind that I wanted, which I wrote it down so that I wouldn't say the wrong thing. I have an RZ 390 UI. So it's the kind, it doesn't have, it's just the Xerox like top. It doesn't have the ability to use a USB with your laptop or anything. And I saw it on eBay and I looked at the listing of the seller and I clicked on them, and it was somewhere, the address was in Cicero, just coincidentally. And so I called the address was at like an auto body shop. So I called them and said that I saw the listing on eBay and that I would love to come and pay cash. And they're like, cool, if you get here before anyone else, like it's yours. So then I just came right away and they sold it to me with 5 drums that they were kind of including in the deal. And they were using it for those like flyers that you see in the entrance to like a diner on like a freestanding thing, and it's cars for sale. So we're using it like in like 4-color like photo way. And once they got a digital printer that was able to print like for a similar amount of money per sheet, they were like, this thing is useless to us. And they obviously had no idea that there's this following of people and artists that really love these machines and use them in more an artistic way. And honestly, I don't want him to know that. I want him to think I'm just buying trash from him. And so, yeah, I loaded it up into my Astrovan and I said, let's go. And so then I bought a drum, a blank drum from Halligan's, and then committed to using that for gold ink. Because I mean, those of you who are familiar with risographs know that you have to do one color per drum, and they're expensive. But I would say before I got my chain stitch machine, the risograph was by far the best investment I ever made for my business, because I printed a lot of things, the prints that I would sell on it, but I also would print the packaging for my patches and my pins, my business cards. I was able to help out friends with some projects too, because I had these colors that like I didn't necessarily need, but I had them. So I could help with printing flyers for people and backings for their pins and stuff. And yeah, I think that was probably in 2016 or 17. Yeah, what else should we talk about risograph wise?
Mm-hmm. Well, the print you did for Quimby's was on your risograph, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's like
pearlescent paper.
Yeah, pearlescent paper with the black ink, which I think looks really cool. Like to do that, but you need to have good drying time because it's soy-based ink on like a sheen paper. It takes a little bit more time to dry, but that's the trade-off for looking really nice.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that story, and I love that you got it from an auto body shop and they didn't really know what you were going to do with it.
Yeah,
done some amazing things with it.
Yeah, I'm so glad that I jumped on that when I did. And I was super lucky that it was right in town. That was not expected. And yeah, it's great. I still use it a lot. Sometimes I still will use my other friend who now has the Riso from that co-working space, because she has fluorescent pink and fluorescent orange. So sometimes I get a little fun with those, but I don't do that often enough to justify getting a new drum for my own. But um, yeah, it's a great tool to have access to. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, I did want to ask you, we've got lots of folks in our audience who either have a DIY business of their own or are thinking of starting one. What advice would you give someone who wants to turn their own DIY passions into a successful business?
Um, hmm. I think I think that, you know, the going the route of doing it on the side of another job that does give you a consistent um uh dependable amount of money, I think is something that worked well for me, because I was able to kind of learn things that I I'm glad that I learned before I took the leap, like um, how to invoice people and how to manage my own time. I feel like that's a big one. When people are used to being told what to do at a job, a normal job, no matter what kind it is, there's, you know, the most of those experiences are one where you have someone who you're reporting to, that you have your projects that they are letting you know what they are, and what timing to make them happen within. And when that's eliminated, I think that really trips a lot of people up when they have never been in that situation before. And there's a lot of romantic things around being able to make a living making artwork, and it is true. But there's also things that are like just very challenging, that are so specific to running your own business, that I think it is wise to be able to try to become familiar with how you navigate those things before you remove your own safety net. And I think the most valuable thing that you can do is to try to cultivate a community of people around you who also are working in an indie capacity. The more diverse, the better, I would say. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of people in my life that work for themselves in a variety of different ways. And it's been so helpful to just listen to them talk about what they're working on and how they're navigating it. And, you know, that subconsciously even just kind of seeps into how I navigate things. And I also am able to have those people as people to lean on when I need advice, or need to be pointed in a direction of who to ask about something. People being kind of in your corner who also are navigating things themselves is super helpful. Yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest one. But yeah, just trying to figure out a little bit of how it would be to do things full time before doing it full time. I think allows someone to be more confident about making that leap. Yeah.
That's really great advice. And I also love what you said about connecting with other folks who are doing similar things in terms of small businesses, and with their passions to share advice and resources and tips. We definitely see that a lot in the DIY publishing community as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's priceless, really. It's something that you can't just like have all of a sudden. It's something that has to be fostered, and you know, a good friend on the other end, you know, is also providing that feedback and help when possible as well. And it's super beneficial mutually. And yeah, there's really no replacement for that.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to ask you, what's next for Vichcraft? Are there any projects on the horizon that you're particularly excited about?
Um, what's next? Well, this will be a pretty busy holiday season. Um, I've got some just projects of things for the store that I'm excited about for the holidays. Nothing crazy. But I'm excited because last year we were open. We've been open for pretty much exactly a year in this space because we opened at the end of October last year. So we were open for the holidays last year, but it was still all very new. And so I'm excited that I've kind of gotten the hang of being in a space like this and being open and listening to what people are enjoying and trying to do more of that. So that'll be fun. And there's a lot of events coming up. What else? I made myself like a stained glass setup and in the back of my store, probably well, it was like a COVID project because I got COVID in the spring. And so I just was like feeling well enough to like work on kind of housekeeping projects back there, but couldn't go anywhere. And so I got a lot of those kinds of things done, but I was busy when I was able to get back to work and busy enough that I haven't used that stained glass setup yet, but I have a lot of glass that I essentially like inherited from a friend of a friend. And so I have it and it's staring at me and I made my little area to use it, but I just need to carve out the time to make stuff with it. Something that is literally not the kind of answer you're looking for, but something fun nonetheless, is that I realized that my one of my pet birds, her birthday is going to be on a Sunday next month. And so I was like, I'm going to actually go all out and make it a thing for PZ's birthday. And she's going to come to the store and it's going to be PZ day, but she'll be in her cage. So she won't be flying around everyone. But I think I'm like really excited about it. I'm going to like make a print to give out to people because that bird is loved. People love her. And I think people come in and they ask all the time, like, oh, is PZ here? I'm like, you guys, she flies. If she was here, she'd be on your head already. You'd know. But I think I'll make it a thing that people will know about beforehand. And again, she'll be contained, even though she won't want to be. But she'll be contained because I want to make sure that people who are afraid of birds can like know to either not come or just be calmed by the fact that she's in a cage. But yeah, I was thinking about that a lot today and how that'll be fun, I think, for people because they're asking where she is. And I'm going to say, honestly, on her birthday, she's going to be here. She's going to come and she's going to have her toys and her treats and stuff. And she's just going to be ready to squeak at people. I think that's fun.
Oh, that's awesome. I do love it that you sometimes feature your birds on the Vichcraft Instagram account. It's always fun to see with Zine Club Chicago when we have our online meetings. Folks' zine pets are a very big part of our event. People's cats, dogs, birds, snakes, rabbits, whatever. So it's always nice to see someone else incorporating their animal companions into what they do.
Yeah, I love that. That's so cute. Yeah.
That was the questions that I had for you. Thank you so much for letting me ask all these things I've been wanting to ask for a while as a fan of Vichcraft. I'd like to turn it over now. We've got lots of folks on YouTube. Liz Mason, who's right next to me, has been diligently recording questions. Say hi, Liz. I'm going to go ahead and start with a question that about half a dozen people have asked me to ask you. Thank you, Zine Club friends. I'm going to show the Quimby's design that you made. This is featured on, this is a book plate sticker, and of course a risograph print and a t-shirt. A bunch of people have asked us, where did you get the inspiration for this design?
Well, I think, I'm trying to think of when exactly and why I decided it would be cool to be inspired by old ornate book plates. I think I was just looking through just a few books that I have that are on my coffee table that like when I'm working on a new logo project or something where I'm trying to cast a wide net of getting ideas. There was some Mucha work that I was looking at, and Alphonse Mucha's work is just one of my favorites to just like consistently sift through and try to find new things to discover because it's also ornate and well done. And I was flipping through that, and then I think there was like a black and white sketch of some kind, and I wanted to find it on Pinterest to add it to my inspiration. And when I looked at that, whatever that sketch was, and on Pinterest, it was like showing me some similar things. And then I saw Alphonse Mucha's book plate. That's a really cool thing to look up on Pinterest if anyone is interested, because there was a lot of ex libris, like this book belongs to for a lot of artists and musicians and people of historical significance that commissioned, I'm sure, in like very special and like sought after artist ways to have one custom made for their own personal collection. So the Muchas showed up, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's something I've never seen. That's so cool. And then some other ones showed up of other artists and people for their own collections, and had the thought that it would be a fun thing to figure out Quimby's version of that kind of like has the mascot in a like a celebrated regal sort of way. And yeah, just got the sketches going from there. And then yeah, had a lot of fun with sketching the different options and getting really ornate, and then kind of tapering it down to make it realistic for a t-shirt and a small scale book plate, which it wasn't even a thought until it kind of came up maybe like a couple weeks into finishing the design, which seems very obvious now, but to present the idea that we should actually make book plates of it, it's like, yeah, obviously, but it wasn't an initial thought. I was mostly just inspired by the concept. But I'm super glad that it became both.
Yes, we are too. We've had folks very excited, like, oh, I haven't seen book plates in a long time. And sometimes folks saying, what is a book plate? And of course, a book plate is, ex libris means from the library of, you could put your name, you could give it as a gift, and I really like how you were able to take the ornateness of your idea and the inspiration behind it and combine it with the playfulness of the Quimby's double-headed mouse. It really felt very much like, the ideal collaboration in terms of your style and Quimby's style sort of meeting to make something new.
Yeah, I agree.
And thanks so much for telling the story behind that. Like I said, lots of folks have said, oh, this is something different we haven't seen at Quimby's before. Where did this idea come from? So appreciate that.
Can I also just say, while we're talking about the two-headed mouse and stuff, and I know that you already know this, but when I was drawing it in just sort of like in a accurate way, I didn't make any sort of like stylistic changes to it, but I just kind of wanted to look like it was coming from the same hand as the rest. So I was essentially like tracing it and zooming in closer to it than I ever had before, because usually I just see it in the blade sign at the actual bookstore and maybe on a sticker here and there. I was certain that the mouse head on the left side was like a plague doctor beak and that the other mouse head was like just regular head. And once I was zooming in, I discovered for the first time that is his hand like this. But I always thought it was a beak. I thought it was like a plague doctor big beak. And so I told him that. I told my friend that, and he was like, what do you mean it's not a beak? And I was like, oh my God. Okay. So who else thinks this is a beak? Maybe someone on this YouTube right now. I don't know.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know if you're team beak or team, alas hand. Because honestly, looking at it, it could, and looking at the original design that Chris Ware created, it could go either way.
And honestly, as bird girl, maybe I should have leaned in. Maybe I should have made it beak mouse, but next time, I don't know.
Yeah, next time, double-headed bird for the Quimby's logo. I love that. We've got a bunch of questions here. I'm going to jump in. Our friend Blue Raven would like to know, how do you avoid burnout when your art and passion is also your day job? That's the dream. So is burnout an ever-present worry for you?
That's a great question. I think for me, what works well is always toggling between different things and different mediums, different levels of urgency. And I think knowing that that's how my brain works best has kept me from having like significant experiences with burnout. I do, of course, because it's very hard to remain creative and productive during times when we are all trying to just grapple with a lot. But yeah, I think that being able to spend a couple of hours chain stitching and then be able to table that project and shift into putting together orders for an hour and then shift into starting some sketches for a project like a collaboration with Quimby's. And then I like to work in those little kind of ways and not procrastinate in the sense that like I don't think I work well when I have to finish something in those 3 hours. I like to be able to like chip away at it, and then when my brain is kind of exhausted with that task, to move on to something else and then come back to the other thing once my brain is more refreshed. I think that really helps me and a lot of creative people.
Makes total sense. Milk Breath, I would like to know, what was the best lesson you learned from your first DIY event that you still carry with you?
I love to talk about this story sometimes, and basically it exemplifies being able to let go when something doesn't work out. And so the short version of the story is that I ordered koozies for my first Renegade. And I had this idea that I was going to have like a Vichcraft branded black koozie. And I was going to, my husband just looked at me like, why are you telling the story? I was going to sell them for $1 and it comes with a LaCroix. Cool idea. It's hot. Okay. And then the day before Renegade was coming and the koozies were not being delivered. It was like, you can't have these. And I lost my mind. I think I was like, so just like, I was so consumed with getting everything done and looking at my to-do list and being like, it has to be this, it has to be this. And just like really incapable of zooming out much because I was like, it has to be perfect. This is my first event. So I was like, I can't not have these, which is like obviously hilarious because it could not matter less. But I was like, this is ruining my ability to feel like I've fulfilled everything that I needed to fulfill. So I was like, I gotta get some. I'm finding them. So what I ended up doing is I went to a bunch of stores, which is a waste of time when it's the night before an event. And by the way, there's a lot of other things I should have been doing. And I went to Menards and I saw that they had these Menards branded koozies that are like Kelly green with the Menards logo, but at the inside they're black. I was like, I'm buying these. I'm going to buy them and I'm going to like screen print the black side and turn them on the opposite side. And I'm going to either like stencil or I'm going to do it. I'm going to have these koozies. And then I did that. And I turned them all inside out and I used spray adhesive on some of my like thick girls to the front stickers. And I attached them and these were Vichcraft koozies. And I think that is the least wise way that I could have spent that time. But I realized that I really struggle with having an idea. And even if I'm the literal only person in the world who knows I even wanted to do that, if I don't see it through, somehow I'm failing. And I'm 8 years later, way more capable of being able to zoom out literally like 1 degree and be like, that's fine. If these like unnecessary koozies are not at this event, not a single person here is going to know whether or not this was even an idea. So it matters 0%. And yeah, I think about how much I was just like super tunnel vision of like, it has to be this because I thought it had to be that. I'm grateful that that's no longer how I am operating. But the friends that know the koozie story, well, you all know the koozie story now. So your friends that know the koozie story, it's just like, it perfectly exemplifies just how in your head you can be when it's something that like, it's very personal, you know, being in that situation. Like I'm selling my work that I made in this environment that I want it to be perfect. It's like an extension of me. And to not have those things be working out like I wanted was like, woe is me. I need to go to Menards and fix this. So yeah, that's not recommended, but still a funny story anyway.
And anyone who happens to still have one of those koozies, even
Oh,
more of a valuable collector's item now because of that story.
turn it inside out. You'll be seeing the Menards logo. Yep.
Kind of related to that, Minzy Mohan wants to know, are the mistakes you've made along the way the most integral part of learning how to have your own business?
I think those things tend to be some of the most memorable things, and they certainly shape the ways that you conduct yourself in the future. So probably, it's like that thing of, if you hear 100 compliments and one note of criticism, you're gonna basically just be focused on that piece of criticism versus all of the well wishes and good comments. So a mistake or something that really is an experience that like you kind of messed something up is going to, for me, those kind of, they definitely stand out more than any time where when things went smoothly, and those things are almost like not memorable at all. If there's a day where it's like, oh, everything that I set out to do worked and nothing went wrong. So yeah, I mean, but also it's been almost 10 years. So fortunately, there have been like some pretty memorable, successful experiences and times where I felt validated in the ways that I was doing things. So yes, they are memorable, but I wouldn't say necessarily that they're the most, the things that have shaped my experiences the most, but there's certainly like significant things that factor into how I, conduct myself in the future,
Lessons learned along the way, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting practical question. Discount Inferno wants to know, did you have to learn all the tax stuff that goes along with invoices and running your own business? And was that difficult to learn the tax stuff?
So one of the things that actually like goes along the lines of meeting people who are also running their own ship and having the friends that you can call upon when things are confusing. Someone early on recommended that I work with a CPA. And so basically like I keep everything organized all year long and do the things throughout the year that I need to do. And then have a CPA do the actual filing. And I think that provides a lot of peace of mind for me as an incredibly anxious person. I could convince myself I'm going to jail very easily if I file my taxes incorrectly. So to have it be like to pay a professional to do the final part after I've provided him with all the information is really valuable to me. And obviously that's like a business expense and something where I'm like, yeah, this is money well spent so that I don't have to spend my time hopefully doing it correctly. But before I actually worked with him, like in the first year, I was doing things the hard way, preparing to do it myself. And then kind of like at the end of that first like fiscal year, it was recommended by friends to work with the person that they were working with. And I was very grateful to be pointed in that direction because it's hard to find someone who works with like small businesses like my own. So yeah.
So it sounds like it's important sometimes to know when to outsource.
Of course.
That's not in your skill set. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. I feel like tax law in particular, always good to have an expert looking over things.
Yes. And like every year my stuff gets more and more confusing because of how many different companies I'm working for and now having a space, and it's a lot. So to have someone it's their job is very helpful. Yeah.
Now we have a question from Munoz, excuse me. Have you considered switching from chain stitch to CNC embroidery to make it easier to produce more items? Or are you worried something would be lost in the switch between processes?
At this point, something would very much be lost. There is kind of, I don't know if it's CNC embroidery, it might be, but there's a version of computerized embroidery that has been like trying its best to emulate chain stitch. And I've seen it with some companies that have like hats or whatever that they're like, it's chain stitch, but it's clearly done digitally. I embrace and really enjoy the fact that this is not automated at all, and that you can see my hand in it, and you can see the decisions that the person who's operating the machine is making with each stitch. It's not scalable the way that something like CNC embroidery or other computerized embroidery machines are. But I've known that from the beginning, and I use it in ways that are specific to what this machine does well, versus trying to like sell some embroidered item that is a product that would be sold as like a competitor to something that's made with a digital machine, because it could never be like at the same price point, and it would take a lot more time to make and all that. So yeah, for me specifically, as a person who really loves tactile things and working with my hands, that's what I love about this machine. And there are many times every weekend that I recommend people go to a digital embroidery company to do to work on their project. If someone comes in and they're like, I want my golf polo with my very small logo or something, I say, here is exactly who you should reach out to locally, who has a computerized embroidery machine. And they will be able to help you out, and it'll be great. And that's not what this machine is for. But yeah, that's just, I don't know. It's not something that I'm interested in, although it has a place, and I tell people where that place is.
Awesome. I really like what you said about wanting to see your hand in your own work. I think that that's very much something that connects what you do with Vichcraft with what the folks in the Zine Club Chicago community and the Quimby's community do in terms of DIY zine making and self-publishing. There's something about seeing your own hand in your creative work, whatever that is, that just is not replaceable by a machine. Although, like you said, there's certainly a place for digitized products, but personally, I'm really glad that there are still folks like you and like our zine makers who want to see their own hand in their work.
Yeah, totally.
If we don't have any more questions coming from our folks on YouTube, I'm gonna wrap up with one more question from Milk Breath. What are your best business practices as a one-person business?
My best business practices. Well, I have always had just a moleskin journal, just a regular 8x10 size. Ever since my first year of college, I've had the same size one, which is fun because I have like at least 30 of them, and they're all like same size. But it's my sketchbook and my like to-do lists and sort of like a calendar. And even before I was even freelancing, and that was before I was doing Vichcraft, I think I was building good habits of knowing where to write those things down in order for me to actually remember them and be reminded of them and execute them, even if it was a project that was for fun, like sewing something for my sister for her birthday. Those were all good habits I was building that related to working for myself. I still do that, but I also have a notes app page always open on my desktop that's linked to my phone, so that it's I'm able to just like always refer to it, and it will like live update in both places, which really works well for me. And the lists exist on paper and in the notes app. But it's nice because then if I'm with someone and they're like, oh, can you get this to me by this day? I can just write it in the app, and then it'll show up in both places. And then when that has to translate to my notebook based on, like what I'm working with there, that'll happen, and it'll have the feeling of like completing the thought by actually writing it down. But it helps because it's 2023 to not like exclusively work on paper. Good practices. What else? I mean, it's all, I don't have like I wish I had an answer where I'm like, I always write emails first thing in the morning, or something where I'm like, I'm doing this at this time. It's not the case. I work on the kinds of things that like I feel moved to hour to hour. And it seems to, I mean, like, because I try to not hold myself to any sort of a like a standard of like, I will only have a successful day if I start early and I go to bed early, because I realize about myself that I like to work into the late parts of the night. And so I try to not give myself a hard time, which is an interesting thing to like unlearn when you grow up with like a kind of 9 to 5, a schedule that gets you set up for a 9 to 5 by like going to school the ways that we do, and then getting regular, you know, being in a society where it's like, yeah, you start early and then you go to bed at a reasonable time. I've learned that I work really well at night. And so just allowing myself to move from one project to the next, and like not forcing myself to have some like creative output when it's not happening, and just giving it the time that it needs. It works well for me. Some people really thrive on routine. I don't think I'm necessarily that person, and I guess that is okay. But the notes app thing has been helpful, and that is very basic. It's not like a special tool, but it works well for me.
It sounds like that's something that's key to being a one-person business, is finding what works for you, whatever it is.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Jenna. This has been so delightful to talk with you, and it's been wonderful to hear your story and the story of Vichcraft. We are so grateful that you took this time with us. For those of you that want to explore more of Jenna's work with Vichcraft, you can find Vichcraft online at vichcraft.com, and on Instagram at Vichcraft. We're going to put all of this information into the YouTube chat, and also into the YouTube video that will live on the Quimby's Bookstore YouTube channel for future reference for folks. Or if you know someone that missed this and you'd want to send them a link, it will be on the YouTube channel. And also, as we mentioned, the Vichcraft studio is located in Irving Park on Kedzie Avenue, and it's open on Sundays. So you can go and check out Jenna's work in person, and bring in things to be custom chain stitched, or choose from items in the store. And if you're interested in the limited edition t-shirt, book plate, stickers, and risograph print that Jenna has designed for Quimby's, you can find those in our shop here in Wicker Park in Chicago, and also online at quimbys.com. I would also like to thank our sponsor of Zine Club Chicago, Quimby's Bookstore, our tech support, and the manager of Quimby's sitting right next to me, Liz Mason. Thank you. Also, awesome. Yes, also mistress of our YouTube questions. Thank you, Liz. Thank you to Anna Jo Beck, our Zine Club Chicago graphic designer, who made the beautiful flyer for this evening, which also features Jenna and her bird. And to all of you who joined us. As I said, this video will live on YouTube, so if you want to revisit it, it'll be there. Share it with folks. And we'll be back next month with Zine Club Chicago here in person at Quimby's Bookstore, with another special event featuring several local artists that are Zine Club Chicago favorites. Save the date for Sunday, November 19th here at Quimby's Bookstore, and we'll have more information coming soon to quimbys.com and the Zine Club Chicago and Quimby social media channels. Thank you, Jenna, and thank you, everyone. This has been a wonderful evening. We'll see you soon.